Why are octopuses obsessed with Pink Floyd? Why do they keep punching fish? And why do Instagram influencers keep kidnapping them for photographs? The answer to all of these questions can be explained by an ordinary looking patch of seashells in New South Wales, Australia, because this is a city like no other. Welcome to Octopolis. In 2009, local diver Matthew Lawrence went for a casual dive, as he often did, in the waters of Jervis Bay, Australia. This marine park is only a few hours away from the hustle and bustle of Sydney, and allegedly has some of the whitest sand in the world. Little did Matthew know that on this seemingly unremarkable day, he was going to find one of the most remarkable discoveries in the natural world. Because swimming along the seabed, Matthew found a city that was made by octopuses. 50 feet down in the waters of Jervis Bay lives Octopolis. It's a community of about a dozen or so gloomy octopuses of different sizes, all living together in close proximity. At any given moment, there's between 1 and 15 octopuses swimming around the seafloor and peering out of their little dens. So, it's no New York or Lagos, but it's absolutely remarkable for a different reason. And that's because octopuses are usually solitary and asocial, only coming together to mate and sometimes to eat each other. So what on earth is going on here in Australia? Matthew reported his discovery to a number of scientists, including David Shiel and Peter Godfrey Smith, who are experts in octopus and cephalopod interactions, and they all began to dive at the site and take observations of what was going on with these octopuses. And it turns out the octopuses spend a lot of time being aggressive. Quite often, a large octopus will reach into a den and pull out a smaller one, almost evicting them. Sometimes they'll get wrapped up in a very dramatic fight or tussle until the loser slinks away along the sea floor. They've even been observed to throw objects at each other using water propulsion from their siphons. Now this is super cool because so far the only animals that we know can use projectiles, ballistics, are things like chimpanzees and elephants. Here the octopuses are using sand and even shells. And the researchers noticed that it was quite common, about 90% of the time, female octopuses who would throw objects at male octopuses if they were pestering them. During these fights, octopuses would sometimes put on a threat display, standing tall, pointing straight up, combined with a dark colour combination. And this was nicknamed the Nosferatu display because it looked very vampiric. The skin of octopuses is made up of different layers of pigment-containing cells. Each of these cells is a bit like a sac containing the pigment and controlled by a ring of muscle which can consciously contract and expand, a bit like opening and closing an umbrella. All in all, it gives the effect of pixels on a TV screen, allowing the octopus to change colour. Now the top layer is the chromatophores. These contain black, red and yellow pigments. The next one down is iridophores. Now they actually cause an iridescent kind of effect. Depending on which angle you view them from, they're kind of shiny. And then right at the bottom we have the leucophores, which pretty much reflect ambient light, so whatever is around the octopus. Now the really amazing thing is that octopuses only have one type of colour receptor in their eyes. So in effect, that makes them colourblind. But we know that somehow they can see and understand colour because of the fact that they can blend in to their surroundings. So what and how do they actually see? Well, just like my jumper, many of the patterns that they use are high contrast, and so they don't really need colour vision to be able to see them. But we definitely know that somehow they can see colour. Scientists have discovered that octopuses have something in their skin called opsins, which basically allow them to see colours with their skin. It's very weird, I know. But in addition to that, octopuses probably use something called chromatic aberration. So you know when you take a photograph and it goes a bit blurry and you start to see some of the colours kind of split apart and create these shadows? Well, that is a problem for photographers, but by measuring how bent the image is, octopuses can kind of interpret that to figure out what the colours actually are. And that might be why they've got very strange shaped pupils, to actually encourage chromatic aberration to help them see the world in colour. It's fantastic. Now, as well as changing colour, octopuses can also change the texture of their skin to blend in or stand out. They've got little bundles of muscle called papillae, which are a little bit like goosebumps, except that they can consciously control them and they can create all sorts of textures. Now, octopuses are kind of the odd one out of the cephalopod family. To understand why, we are going to go back in time and meet the ham. No, not ham, the hypothetical ancestral mollusk. Octopuses are part of the phylum Mollusca, and one of the early types of mollusks was the ham. But out of the ham came things like bivalves, mussels and clams, nudibranchs, the sea slugs, snails, and then also the cephalopods, which is a very advanced group containing octopuses, cuttlefish, squid, and more. Now, a lot of the other cephalopods have very interesting social behaviour. So, if we look at the giant cuttlefish, we have small males who will basically wear drag and adopt the colours and the patterns of the females so that they can sneak past the big males and mate with the females. Then we have Caribbean reef squid, who can simultaneously have two different patterns on each side of their body and talk to two different other squid at the same time. So given that octopuses are usually so solitary, what is happening in Octopolis? Well, in the centre of Octopolis is a long lost man-made object. It's about a foot or so in length, quite small and unassuming, and at this point it's completely encrusted with barnacles and other sessile organisms. Now, the area surrounding this object is made of very, very fine sand, and it's quite hard to burrow in and build dens. Because of their soft bodies, octopuses are very vulnerable to predators like sharks, dolphins, seals, and so for them, having a place to hide is really important. Therefore, this isolated patch of habitat to hide in started to attract quite a few octopuses. It was a bit like an oasis in the desert. Now, when these octopuses moved in, one of their favourite things to eat is scallops, and as they ate the scallops, they would discard the scallop shells behind. Now, as they did that, more and more scallop shells began to build up, and algae and other organisms started to colonise these areas, and then it created more and more habitat, hard habitat, for other octopuses to build dens in. So it was a bit of a positive feedback effect. And it's not just the octopuses who are benefiting. There's a far greater concentration of wildlife around Octopolis than in the surrounding areas. There's schools of small fish and squid and baby sharks lying on the sea floor. So this is what we call ecosystem engineering. It's when organisms physically alter the conditions in their environment and make it more suitable for other organisms. Think of how beavers build dams. Now, the title of this video is a bit of a lie. A city like no other, because here's the thing. Octopolis isn't actually unique. In 2016, we found another octopus city, and it's called Octlantis. It's not the best name, but hey ho, I struggle to come up with good names for my cities when I'm playing Civ 5. Octlantis is of a similar size to Octopolis. There's a nice map of it here, except in this case, there's no central man-made object. Now, for a long time, we thought Octopolis might be a sort of one-off created by that man-made object. Maybe there have been other cities before, but they've just been lost to time. Or it could be that Octopolis is the very first, and there was some sort of settler who emigrated and perhaps founded Octlantis. I don't know, but it's fun to think about. Now, is this social behaviour unique to the gloomy octopus? Absolutely not. In the 1970s, Panamanian biologist Arcadio Rodaniche discovered a colony of almost 40 octopuses living together in close proximity off the coast of Nicaragua. These octopuses seemed to share dens with each other happily and even appeared to kiss each other during mating. You see, octopus mating is usually a long-distance affair due to the risk of cannibalism. Male octopuses have evolved a special arm, the Octopuses, which they can use to deliver sperm packets to the female from a safe distance. Some species will actually rip this arm off and leave it in the female and then retreat to safety. In contrast, the octopuses that Arcadio found would lovingly embrace each other in a beak-to-beak embrace. They would flash quite bright colours during mating and sometimes release ink. The vast majority of octopuses are semiparous, which means they only mate once in their life and they die shortly after mating. But Arcadio noted that these octopuses were iteroparous, meaning they could mate several times in their lifetime, and they appeared to have a much longer lifespan than other octopuses. Thrilled by what he had found, Arcadio submitted a paper in the 1990s, but his claims were just so outlandish to the scientific community. They just went against everything we thought we knew about octopuses that his paper didn't pass peer review and it was never published. Thankfully, many years later, a different team of scientists from UC Berkeley came across the same octopus and they got in contact with Arcadio, and finally in 2015 he was able to publish his account, which is really nice because he unfortunately passed away in 2016. We've nicknamed this octopus the harlequin octopus, or the larger Pacific striped octopus, but it hasn't officially been described by science yet, so it has no Latin name. If you've got any ideas, feel free to leave them in the comments. Okay, so octopuses can interact with members of their species. What about members of other species? Many octopuses, such as the day octopus, will work together with large fish to hunt prey, and this is called cooperative hunting. However, these interactions aren't as cute or as wholesome as they might seem, because quite often the octopuses have been seen to punch the fish. Sometimes these punches seem to be nothing more than the octopus trying to get better access to the prey and kind of pushing the fish aside. But there are also many instances where these punches appear to serve no clear benefit to the octopus. In this scenario, researchers have speculated that the octopuses are punching the fish out of spite. You see, cooperative hunting can be quite complicated and messy, and sometimes fish will join the party expecting a free meal without putting any effort in. So it could be that these punches serve as a partner control mechanism, punishing fish who act out of line. Octopuses might even be able to form friendships with humans, or at least that's the human interpretation of such interactions. The documentary The Octopus in My House tells the story of Heidi, a day octopus who lived with David Scheel and his daughter Laurel. In the documentary, we see that Heidi has the ability to distinguish between people and can recognise different faces, so she swims eagerly up to greet Laurel and touch her and splash her with her siphon. Octopuses have hundreds of suckers on their arms which can actually taste, and so they can probably recognise us from the different chemicals in our skin and our sweat as well. Likewise, the film My Octopus Teacher showcases the relationship between a filmmaker, Craig Foster, and an octopus that he encounters in a South African kelp forest. Now, I think the film has done a lot to make people aware of how intelligent octopuses might be. But it does have a few flaws, namely, I think it does over-anthropomorphise the octopus, and it also promotes a bit of a harmful rhetoric, the idea that octopuses and other wild animals will enjoy human contact. Now, no matter how good your intentions are, without even touching wild animals, even just by getting too close to them, you can cause them a lot of stress, and I'm very passionate about the issue of wildlife disturbance. I've seen this phenomena pop up on social media where octopuses seem to climb and latch onto swimmers, and it's not always, but it is quite often, attractive women. You can very clearly see the octopus is stressed. It's inking, which is what it will do as an anti-predator defense, really trying to get away. But then, because you brought it up to open water, the only habitat, the only thing it can cling onto is the woman. Of course that's what it's going to do, but it doesn't want to be there. However, if you want to touch this particular octopus, go right ahead, my friend. That one is on you. In order to avoid disturbing the residents of Octopolis and Atlantis, a lot of the research is done via remote video cameras. However, sometimes the octopuses still take matters into their own hands, or arms. Why are humans so drawn to octopuses? Well, we seem to like hanging out with animals who respond to our voice and seek out physical contact with us. But most of the time, this is with birds and dogs, even reptiles. Octopuses are kind of a juxtaposition. They seemingly have the intelligence of a vertebrate, but in the soft body of an invertebrate, with 3 hearts and blue blood and a brain that literally has their esophagus running through the middle. We're separated by at least 600 million years of evolution, and our last common ancestor was probably some sort of flatworm. Now, some octopuses have a similar amount of neurons to a dog, about 500 million. But here's the thing, about a third of those neurons are in the octopus's arms. So sometimes they're described as having 9 brains, a sort of centralised processing area, and then 8 little brains for their arms. They're just unlike anything else, alien even. And that's probably why aliens in pop culture often resemble octopuses. Think of Independence Day, or Arrival, even the Daleks. Now, a while ago, there was a theory knocking around that octopuses are actually aliens. That is complete poppycock, but there we are, that's the paradox of octopuses. this alienness and yet this familiarity. When I see the octopuses in Octopolis going about their little lives, hunting for food, trying to find a mate and avoiding predators, I can relate to that. They just like me, for real. So, what does Octopolis teach us overall? Well, it seems like octopuses, and perhaps invertebrates in general, are much more intelligent and capable of social interactions than previously thought. But it's a kind of intelligence that we may never be able to fully comprehend. And we need to be careful not to impose our human views of intelligence onto them. Though it seems contradictory, the very fact that they are so intelligent means we owe it to them not to interfere and disturb these special sites, and places like Octopolis need to be protected. If you're interested in learning more about octopus intelligence and the concept of consciousness, I highly recommend the book Other Minds by Peter Godfrey Smith. It was pretty much the inspiration behind me writing this video in the first place. I'll also put some links in the description to some really great scientific articles related to the video. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, otherwise you will be pinched by a giant bobbit worm in your sleep. Until next time, best fishes.